In this video, we'll look at percentiles. A percentile is a way to report data and show what percentage of scores were less than some particular value. You might be familiar with this in test scores for standardized tests like the SAT. Maybe you got your score report back and you saw that you were in, say, the 82nd percentile. What that would mean is that you scored better than 82% of all of the other test takers. So let's look at an example of how that works. So let's say we have Jenny, who scored an 86 on her test, and the STEM plot shows all of the other test scores of her classmates. So we find the 86, that's in bold there, and then we count up how many people scored less than 86. So we do not include the 86, just all the values that are less than that. If we do that, there are 21 people in her class that scored less than an 86 out of the 25 students total. So if you do 21 divided by 25, you get 0.84 or 84%. So Jenny scored better than 84% of her classmates, which is another way to say that she's in the 84th percentile. Next, we want to take a look at cumulative relative frequency graphs. So cumulative, just like if you were thinking of if you had a cumulative final exam, that would mean that everything from the whole year would be on that test. For a cumulative relative frequency graph, it means you're going to be looking at certain outcomes plus all of the outcomes that occurred before then. So here's an example where we look at the ages of the first 44 presidents when they are inaugurated. And there were, for example, here, 2 presidents that were between the ages of 40 and 44 when they were inaugurated. And there were 7, for example, that were between the ages of 60 and 64. So out of 44, so 2 out of 44, that's 4.5%, 7 out of 44, that's 15.9%. You're familiar with this, we did this back in chapter 1. That's just the relative frequencies. If we want to find the cumulative relative frequencies, what we'll do is we'll add in the previous values as well. So here's where these numbers are coming from. There's still only 2 presidents that were between the ages of 40 and 44 when they were inaugurated. But then there's 7 that were between the ages of 45 and 49. So if we want the cumulative value, that's the 2 from before plus the 7 new ones, which is 9 total. And then from 50 to 54, there's 13 of those. So if we add in another 13, now we're at 22 total that are from 50 to 54 or younger when they were inaugurated. So that's where these numbers here are coming from. They're adding each of these previous values. And then when we find their cumulative relative frequencies, now we're doing 2 out of 44, 9 out of 44 instead of 7 out of 44, and so forth. And notice that in a cumulative relative frequency, by the time you get to the end, it's going to add up to 100% because now you have 100% of all of the data. If we then plot all of these values, so from 40 to 44, that's 4.5%, and then when we get to 45 to 49, that's at 20.5%. So that's where this point here is. This is the roughly 20.5% instead of 15.9%. So we're plotting these values along the y-axis instead of these values. And you'll see that we'll end at 100% since that will be, well, the total will be a total of 100% by the time we're done.